Hi, and welcome to the OT is In, the podcast where we merge the worlds of education and occupational therapy to empower families like yours. I'm Sarah Collins, your host, an occupational therapist and a homeschooling parent. I've experienced occupational therapy by supporting families for over 15 years, but also through seeking out support of my own children, so I'm right here in the trenches with you. Though there is not one way to educate your child, there is a lot to consider when individualizing an education. And the goal of this podcast is to explain some of the why behind what an occupational therapist is thinking so you can apply it to your own family. Especially with my three favorite topics: executive functioning, handwriting, and sensory processing. Each episode will be packed with practical tips, expert interviews, and real-life stories aimed at helping you to create a supportive learning environment for your child. So, grab your headphones and get ready to dive in of the collision of education and occupational therapy. I'm Sarah Collins from Homeschool OT, and I'm thrilled to have you with me on this journey of discovery. Hey, and welcome back to the OT is In, your go-to podcast for insightful conversations on homeschooling and occupational therapy. I'm your host, Sarah Collins, and today we have the pleasure of hosting Amy Sloan. Amy is a second-generation homeschooler, an accomplished writer at Humility and Doxology.com, and the host of the Homeschool Conversations podcast. She's also the host of the Wonder Homeschooling Challenge, which is live until January 31st. So immediately after this episode, go to her website at humilityanddoxology.com/Winter Wonder Challenge, and you will find some fantastic things, even some from Homeschool OT. Now, in this episode, we dive into the theme of prioritization. We're exploring how Amy balances homeschooling 5 children, navigating unexpected challenges like her son's cancer diagnosis, and maintaining a rich educational environment. From the heartwarming traditions of a morning basket routine to adapting homeschool plans during crisis, Amy shares invaluable insights that will resonate with homeschooling families. So whether you're new to homeschooling or a veteran, this episode promises to be both inspiring and practically useful. Stay tuned as we explore the intricacies of prioritizing what truly matters in education and in family life. Hey there, listeners. It's Sarah Collins, the host of the OT is In. Thank you for being here. And guys, the new year is here. Can you even believe it? It's the perfect time to pause and reevaluate your homeschooling rhythms, build on what's already working, but let's be real. Sometimes homeschooling can feel overwhelming, especially when it comes to meeting each child's unique needs. That's where Homeschool OT comes in. So with over 16 years of experience as an occupational therapist and 7 years here as a homeschool mom, I get it, and I've been there. I've had times where our homeschool felt peaceful and that it was supporting and serving our children well. I've also had times where I knew I needed help and to build my team. I've said it before, and I will continue to say it repeatedly: homeschooling is not alone schooling. So if you need help to figure out what that means, I have 2 resources for you. First, Why Choose OT is a downloadable guide designed to help families understand the role of occupational therapy in homeschooling. It answers key questions, explains how OT can address challenges like sensory processing and handwriting, and helps you decide if OT is right for your family. And the second, the OT Service Provider Guide, offers practical advice for finding and collaborating with an OT who aligns with your homeschooling needs. So this guide simplifies the process of identifying providers who understand goals and can deliver the right support. Both resources empower parents to create tailored, effective learning experiences for your children. So explore these tools and start transforming your homeschool today. You can find those at homeschoolot.com/shop or find them here linked in the show notes. Thank you for being here. Now let's get on with the show. Hey, and welcome back to the OT is In. Today I have Amy Sloan with us, and this entire month we're going to be talking about prioritization. And Amy is here. She's going to chat a little bit about her own family and her own homeschool and how we decide priorities within it. Amy, first, can you go ahead and just give us an introduction of who you are and your own homeschooling journey?
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here with you today, Sarah. Thanks for having me. Like you said, my
Absolutely.
name is Amy Sloan. I write at humilityanddoxology.com and host the Homeschool Conversations podcast. I'm actually a second generation homeschooler. So I was homeschooled through high school
Awesome.
graduation. And now my husband and I have homeschooled our 5 children. Our oldest graduated from our homeschool a couple years ago and is in his second year at university. And then our next oldest is a senior this year, and we go all the way down to a 9-year-old. So it's
Wow.
definitely an adventure, and we've learned a lot, but it's the best hard thing I do.
Yeah. So would you say, does your homeschool now look like what yours did growing up?
There are so many ways in which it actually does, I think,
Okay.
because I think if there was one thing I learned growing up is that we don't have to fit inside a box.
Boom.
So I never worried about my homeschool looking just like someone else's. I've always been very comfortable like picking and choosing what works best for our family. That being said, the dynamics just are different, right? We're a different family with different personalities. I have 5 kids, and growing up, it was just me and my brother, and we
Okay.
were 4 years and 5 grades apart. So just there, the logistics are different. But I think the things of a home filled with books and really focusing on those experiences and a love of learning definitely have impacted my homeschool today.
Love that. When your mom then was making the homeschooling decision, it wasn't like now when it is a lot more common. She was a trendsetter, huh?
Yes, and actually my mother-in-law as well. My husband was homeschooled through 7th grade. And so I'm
Wow.
like, how in the world did they homeschool without the internet?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Seriously.
But I'm so thankful for that first generation of homeschool moms that really put in a lot of work to make things so much easier for us now.
Yeah, I agree. Now, so did you always think that you were going to homeschool because of your experiences?
Yes. So my husband, John, and I talked about homeschooling even before we got married. We had both had a really positive experience being homeschooled. And I was so excited to get to share all the things I loved with my children, to brainwash them to love Shakespeare and nerdy stuff like that. And so it was just a very easy decision for us, not something we really overthought at all. It just was what we wanted to do from the beginning.
So when I first started, I literally set up a room with desks and all this stuff. So my kids went to public school up through fourth grade. My daughter was in fourth grade, and then it was just the timing of a move that had us get started. But I set up desks. I was ready to go with their like books and all of things like that. And I feel like you probably never had that experience of I'm going to make this look exactly like school. So can you talk a little bit then about, because those were my priorities at the time, was like, I'm going to make this, we're just going to do it at home. And it's evolved very much since then. But can you talk about what were your priorities then as far as just moving into your own homeschool day?
Yeah, it's really funny to hear you talk about that because I hear that from a lot of
Yeah.
the homeschool moms I interview as well. We did the Pledge of Allegiance and we had the chalkboard set up and all these things. And I am thankful that because I had come from this outside the box background, I didn't come in thinking I had to fit a traditional school model because I had never experienced that. But I would say that there is still such a learning curve just in
Yeah.
being a mom. My friend Lena sometimes says that homeschooling is like parenting on steroids. And so I
I'd agree
think
with
there's
that.
just so much that goes into this whole process of learning how to parent, learning how to educate, not just random child that I've imagined in my head, but the actual children in my own home. And so I think I really saw those first few years as a clash between this ideal I had in my head
Mhm.
and reality. Because, of course, I was going to do all the good things my mom had done and avoid all her mistakes. And so then I would be the perfect homeschool mom.
Yeah, you wouldn't make any of mistakes.
Exactly. No. And so I had all these ideals, these things that I said were important, that were my priorities, right? And yet I was finding myself becoming more and more discouraged because what I had in my head as my priority was somehow not really working itself out into the day to day realities of our home, especially things that were really important to me, beautiful memory work and lots of time to read aloud. Those things, just by the end of the school day, I was tired and I didn't want to really be with the kids anymore. Everybody can go to our rooms for some chill out time now. And so I was like really confused how to bring my priorities into my reality. And so that really changed when I started hearing about the idea of like morning time or morning basket. And I was like, wait, I'm allowed to do that stuff I love first. This
Yeah.
revolutionized the way I thought about my homeschool day because I felt I was supposed to do the math and the handwriting, those things. And then I got to do my priorities as the treat at the end of the day. And to just flip it around and realize I could do those beautiful things first completely changed the way we did our homeschool. And it was the best thing we've done for sure.
What kind of allowed you to make that change? Because I've heard it from both sides where I felt like it had to be this beautiful thing because people have heard about morning baskets and all of this. And that's the way that we start our day too. Actually, now it's at lunchtime because my daughter's away for the morning. But people, and then they feel pressure because they've got one kiddo who's leaving the room all the time, or one kiddo who just can't sit to listen, or one child who being around that large group of kids or small group, whatever, just for whatever reason, it's not working. And then the mom's, I'm not doing this right. What would you say to that mom?
Yeah, those are real questions that we can have. And hard part is you don't just figure out an answer one time and then move from there. As children change, situations change, circumstances change. Then once you have teenagers, they have jobs or outside classes. So things are constantly in flux. But what I kept coming back to is what my actual priority was. And it wasn't that it was going to look a certain way, or actually, it's not very pretty. I print things out on like plain black and white paper. It does not make for
Same.
very beautiful Instagram photos. But I knew the thing that actually mattered to me is that we all came together, that we started our day with that relationship time, that we had shared memories, whether that meant we had a long bit of time. Some years we had a lot of time. Other years it was like 10 minutes was all we had. And both of those, although they looked different on the outside, met my priority, which was starting the day all together, starting the day, building that shared family culture. And so I think that is helpful to not think about what you want it to necessarily look like, but what actually matters. And to me, what actually mattered was starting the day together, starting the day with our beautiful memory work, our scripture reading, our singing, our read aloud time. And so then I could more easily flex that as other
Yeah.
circumstances changed, while keeping the thing that was most important to me.
I love that. And it's almost like that priority then gave you the anchor point to your day. And so much of what we talk about here at the OT is in, especially when we're thinking of the brain and executive functioning skills, are if we are continually having to make a plan and then change it and then make a plan and then change it, how taxing that is on our own brains, on the mom's brain. And then how if our kids are trying to follow what we're doing, then it's difficult for them too. And then it just can be an ugly spiral. But what you're
It's so
saying
true.
there, yeah, it's like you took a point of your day and you started with that. And here's the anchor, because this is what's most important to me. And then you could move other things around. Am I saying that right? Is that,
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely. I think what you were saying about removing as many decisions as possible makes it so much simpler, which is
yeah.
actually why I do a big picture homeschool plan that basically can be replicated week to week. And I don't focus on the specific page numbers or specific like details of what we're going to do. It's more like, here's the framework. So it
Hmm.
gives us then that freedom to be flexible within a structure. So it is the best of both worlds. Like I
Yeah.
know what we're going to get to. We all have that. We don't have to wonder. But then on any given day, we're able to be flexible. And that makes such a difference.
Yes. And so in OT terms, we often say like that predictability leads to flexibility because you're allowed to what is going to come first, second, or third. It allows what is in that first time to be who knows what page number you're going to be on or what book you're going to read or whatever. You just know the flow of the day. And for our kids, especially our kids with sensory processing disorder or kiddos that really need that. I know what to expect, what I'm going to see, or what I'm going to smell, or what I'm going to taste, or what I'm going to feel, any of that. If it's in that order, then the things that are going to come around can change, but that predictability is there. Now, you guys went through a time though where your priorities had to shift completely overnight. And I'm comfortable if whatever you want to share with us would be really helpful, I think, for the families who are listening here. So can you talk a little bit about that time and what that looked like for you?
Yeah. So at the beginning of last school year, so just about 3 weeks into our homeschool year, we ended up receiving the diagnosis no parent wants to hear. That is, our youngest son has cancer. And so the year and a half that have gone by since then have been filled with a lot of really high intensity treatment for him, lots of unexpected and planned hospitalizations. It's definitely affected the whole family on a personal level, as well as the realities of our homeschool. But
Yeah.
I knew right away in that first couple weeks where we were just trying to process what was happening and make sure people were fed and loved. Right
Yeah.
then, it was like, let's just focus on loving each other. We're here for each other. But then knowing I did actually still have to educate my children. And so I thought to myself, okay, this school year will not look the way I had planned. And I can try my best to somehow keep up that plan I had made and feel discouraged and
Mhm.
overwhelmed all year and behind. Or I can choose proactively now what I'm going to just say, you know what? I am taking this off our plate.
Yeah.
So, for a family that actually really loves academics, and we have what some people might consider like a pretty rigorous approach to academics, cut out entire subjects. And I just said, you know what, guys? We're not going to do this subject and this subject. We're
Yeah.
just taking it off our plate this year. And I came up with just a very simple thing. I don't know if you know Pam Barnhill. She has this idea of the minimum viable homeschool day. So, off of that, I thought to myself, at the end of this year, what will I feel has been a successful homeschool year? Whether that was my son, obviously, who was really struggling physically and
Yeah.
emotionally, or his older siblings who were also struggling physically and
Yeah.
emotionally, but had a little bit more capability than he did. So I thought, okay, what will make me think this homeschool year was still successful? And I just had a few things that I knew were really important that I wanted us to maintain. And that was our morning time, because that
Okay.
was this beautiful thing that meant a lot to all of us. And also just for me as mom,
I
I felt
completely
like if I
agree.
could just keep that thing that had always been our touch point going, we wouldn't have completely lost that beautiful connection point in our day. So I was like, all right, I want to keep up with our morning time. We're going to read something every day and do a little math. Now,
Okay.
there were other things that got accomplished, but those were like the three things I was like, if that's all we can get to in a day, then that's what we'll do. And I think just making the plan ahead of time to take a break from a few subjects was really one of the best decisions I made. If
Yeah.
another family finds themselves in some sort of unexpected crisis, I think just being proactive to decide what your priorities are as a family, and your priorities may be different than what mine were,
Yeah.
and then focus on those things first. And then other stuff, if it gets done, great.
It gets
But if
done.
it
Yeah.
does, but if it doesn't, you can feel that peace knowing you hit the things that were most important for your family.
I love that. Because there isn't one right way to do this homeschooling thing. And when you were thinking of your priorities, so how did you, I know that the morning time you've talked about really, it's the biggest thing on your heart, but how did you decide the other priorities? Was it you or was it your whole family or who led that?
It was primarily led by me, but based on things that as a family have been important priorities to us. We are a family that prioritizes a very literature word rich home. And
Mhm.
for some of my children, that means reading with their eyes. And for some, that means reading with their ears as their primary method of reading. But regardless, that is a huge priority in our family. And so I knew I didn't want to lose that. And then my husband is an engineer and I'm a nerd. So we both love math. And it feels like something that's very straightforward and logical. Like when your
Yeah.
brain's going all different directions, it's nice to just math is always there for you. There's always a right and a wrong answer.
The consistency. I love how
Exactly.
math is there for you.
That's right. So I think it was just based on things that I knew. Then also some of the content subject or the subjects that you can do in any order, science or history, you
Yeah,
can catch up on that much more easily or really learn it as you're reading or watching documentaries. But it's harder to catch up, which I hate that phrase, but I don't know how else to say it. If you
I agree.
start getting behind on the math or you just start forgetting some of the concepts. And so
Are you a homeschooling parent who's reevaluating your curriculum this January? Well, it is the perfect time to take a fresh look at what's working and what's not. So, if math has been a challenge in your home, CTC Math might be the game changer that you're looking for. CTC Math is a comprehensive online math program designed with homeschool families in mind. So, whether your kids are struggling with tricky concepts or flying through their lessons, CTC Math offers flexibility, self-paced lessons, and clear, easy to understand explanations that meet your family's unique needs. With CTC Math, parents can step back and focus on other parts of homeschooling while their children gain confidence and mastery in math. Plus, the family membership makes it affordable for households with multiple students. It's January. Don't let another semester go by without the right tools. So visit ctcmath.com to start your free trial today and make this the year that your family loves math. Now, back to the show. How else during this time, right? So you built in some of your anchor points and we're like, this is the one thing that we're going to get done in the day, or the few things that we're going to get done in the day. How else did you support your family or other people support your family during that time?
So there were so many people who immediately in the aftermath of Isaac's diagnosis and consistently through the past year and a half have supported us, bringing us meals and helping with driving and all of the things, all of the ways. We could not do this without our family and friends, our church community who have supported us all the way through this. So I don't want it to sound like, yeah, we just did a great job figuring out how to handle this all on our own, because that certainly did not happen. So people have actively helped us long term. I'm very thankful for that. And then as far as things that we chose to do as a family, especially during times of long hospitalizations, we've had several of those, including Isaac was in the hospital at Christmas. He spent
Gosh, yeah.
almost an entire month in the hospital at the end of last school year. Those were some of the hardest times on the family as a whole. And so, as my husband and I would pass like ships in the night, switching out who was staying at the hospital, we
Mhm.
tried to really make sure we spent one-on-one time with our other children because we didn't want to just treat them like a group. Okay, well, we're just going to lump you all together. It
Yeah.
was really important that for us as parents, that each of our children knew that they were seen and loved and cared for, even as practically speaking, Isaac had to receive so much extra time and attention. So that was one thing both my husband and I separately tried to make sure we had one-on-one time with the kids.
Yeah.
Sometimes that would look like read alouds or going out for a walk or coffee or watching a show together, but that was really important. And then trying to find time to have one-on-one time as husband and wife, which
Yes.
is really hard when you have a child in the hospital. But accepting help, I think that's humbling. It's really hard to be the one to accept help when you're used to being the one giving help.
Mhm.
It's worth it. And it's important for the whole family to see mom being willing to accept help.
Yeah.
So we took people up on their offers to spend the night at the hospital or spend a few hours at the hospital so that John and I had time to actually be in the same room at the same time. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Good for you. Now I'm picturing in your head being like, okay, I'm checking off each of my kids and I'm checking off food and I'm checking off my husband and I'm checking like how did you go through those priorities on a day-to-day basis? Did you have this like checklist running through your head or did you find it to be more of a flow? How did you work that?
I more thought of it in the course of a week or kind of little chunks of time. And I didn't actually write down a spreadsheet, which is actually surprising because at the hospital, they laugh at us for the family who does a lot of spreadsheets. But I think I just kept that going in my head, running through the loop of the
Yeah.
people that I wanted
Yeah.
to make sure to connect with at any given week. And I think that's actually probably because I was used to doing that as a mom of many anyway. On any given individual homeschool day, you're not necessarily going to be able to give each individual the exact same amount of time and
Right.
energy. And I've learned that's okay. That's normal, that you're not doing anything wrong. I just try to think of it more like over the course of a week, making sure I'm checking in with everyone equally. So I guess it naturally,
Progressed in that
yeah,
way.
progressed in that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So now I know that there are many types of different homeschool styles. And so obviously yours had to change during that period. And we've talked about that a little bit, but and still probably now at this point, right? I know even today you were like, Sarah, I'm not quite sure if I can do this. So this is an ongoing, I don't want to say situation. I'm not really quite sure of a better word
Crisis.
there. There we go. But an ongoing of within your homeschool. So is there a way that you would say your philosophy of life and your philosophy of homeschooling has changed? And what would you say it is now? And what was it before?
It's really interesting because this question goes perfectly along with the prioritization topic. Because I would say that in one significant way, it actually hasn't changed. I've considered myself a restfully classical educator or
I
a
love
Christian
it.
classical educator from the beginning. Sometimes I joke my mom was classical before it was cool, and we have taken that approach in our education. And for me, what that essentially means is not a particular curriculum or book list or anything like that, but it's an idea of focusing on truth and learning with humility, being able to listen to a wide range of voices, to learn to love my neighbor across time and culture and
Yeah.
space. And so focusing on truth, focusing on what kind of humans do I want to raise? Because we're not just educating kids, like we want them to grow up and
Right.
be good humans. And so that has really been at the core of classical education. And so I would say that hasn't changed actually. Now,
I'd
I
agree.
can't necessarily do all the extra cool things I used to do. Our reading lists look much smaller these days. A lot of things look a lot simpler, but the core of how we approach and think about our children, how we think about learning, and our goals for education really haven't changed.
Now, you also, though, are not just a homeschool mom. I would say you're also, that was a terrible thing to say, just a homeschool mom. That's nothing. What am I doing here? Just means nothing there. You, however, you have additional roles, right? Because you're also an entrepreneur and within your own website and running all of that. So, what is it that you do there to support other homeschool families?
I love to be able to encourage other homeschool moms to see that there's not just one way to homeschool. I believe that we can learn a lot, not just from people who homeschool the same way we do, but maybe from people who homeschool a little differently. It can
Absolutely.
give us a different perspective. And it doesn't mean we're going to start trying to homeschool all those different ways, because
Right.
that would make us insane.
Yeah.
But we can really like it can shine a light on maybe, oh, I haven't really thought about that in my homeschool. So I love being able to interview all sorts of different educators and parents on my podcast. But I most of all like to point people towards the rest of the gospel. That's important for me and my platform. And then I really am passionate about beautiful memory work, not lists of facts. So I love to send out weekly poems to my email list. I have tons of free printable resources because I think everyone needs a little bit more poetry and Shakespeare in their life.
Do you know what's funny is my kids absolutely love Shakespeare and I'm always reading it and I'm like, I have no idea what's being said right now. Like,
Oh my
they,
goodness.
they
I
laugh
need to
at
meet
me
your
all the
kids.
time.
They would
Yes.
get along with mine.
Yeah, my mom, my Annabelle, my teenager is forever. Mom, is that because we do it in our morning time loop too? And so it's not every day, it's just every once in a while. And she's always, is today the day? I'm like, who are you?
I love it.
But,
Yeah, we generally do it monthly. So I'll do 1 month of a set of poems, and then we'll do a month that's a Shakespeare month. So we're kicking off a Shakespeare month right now as we record, which is always fun.
Good for you. I'm going to be sure that I'm printing off all of my resources from your site because goodness gracious, I am not that. Do you know, though, my aunt taught drama for years and years, and her husband, so my uncle, has a master's degree in Shakespeare. And so how this never came to me, I don't know, but it skipped my generation and is right on to my daughters.
Okay, we need to get you some good Shakespeare films because Shakespeare is designed to be watched or heard, not just read. So maybe that'll catch your
Yes,
attention.
you're right. It will. See, so many things I'm taking away from today. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom, and especially about prioritization and how that can change over time, but still have a very successful homeschool for sure. And how can people find you?
You can find me at humilityanddoxology.com. I'm Humility and Doxology, all the places, Instagram, YouTube. And then if you're a podcast listener, then check out Homeschool Conversations with Humility and Doxology, wherever you're listening to this podcast, and it's on YouTube as well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of The OT is In. If you're ready to dive deeper into how occupational therapy can support your homeschool journey, don't forget to check out the free downloadable resources at homeschoolot.com. You'll find Why Choose OT, a helpful guide that breaks down how OT can make a difference for your child, and guide to different service providers, so you can find the support that fits your family's unique needs. So head over to homeschoolot.com to grab those resources and take the next step in empowering your homeschool experience. Until next time, keep growing, learning, and creating a homeschool that works for your family. I'll see you next week.